I've not been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, I'm told. But I've heard that there's a lot of attorneys that are there. And here's another instance. This is West Michigan's Morning News. Steve Kelly, Brett Bakita, Tony Brooks in for Brett Bakita. And joining us on the live line is the patent professor, attorney John Rizvi. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Daryl Hall, who's now 77, is suing John Oates, who's 75, John Oates' wife, and another trustee. This lawsuit filed earlier this month. What's going on?
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions unanswered, and I want to first of all clarify that there's Daryl Hall is seeking a restraining order, but it's not the type that most people think of. It's not a physical restraining order, as you mentioned their ages. It's not to prevent John Oates from coming over and physically assaulting him or anything. It's a legal restraining order temporarily preventing John Oates from selling any ownership in their publishing catalog until the court really gets to make a full determination of an agreement between them. And that agreement is confidential, and the judge has sealed those documents, so we don't know what the agreement is between the two, and that's probably what's at contention here. There's a lot of speculation that perhaps Daryl Hall had a right of first refusal between them, and perhaps he's wanted the ability to purchase John Oates' shares himself.
Oh.
Partly that comes from interviews he's given where he's really regretted selling his interest back in 2007 when it was worth substantially less than it's worth now.
Interesting. So just in general, because it feels like we've seen a lot of this lately, artists selling their music catalogs, what would an agreement look like between a duo like this? If it was, in good faith.
Yeah, so, it could cover a lot of things. Partially, one thing it could cover is their ability to perform individually the song. They could cover that, perhaps, none of us have really it's very seldom have Hall or Oates performed individually. Usually it's been as a duo, and they do a lot better together. And that might be some of the things the agreement covers. When you say you're seeing a lot more of these, part of that is that it's an incredibly appreciating asset because of streaming music, which is now exploded licensing opportunities for TV shows, movies. You'll even see music licensed to video games, and the value is just incredibly, it's exploding. So a lot of those early contracts for sale, we have artists and musicians regretting their sale because of how much the value has gone up, and that's partly where Hall said in an interview his sale in 2007 is one of his big life's regrets because of how much that value has gone up since his sale.
Do we know how it was divided between the two of them, like percentage-wise? Is there one of the two that has a substantially higher split?
The default rules for joint ownership is 50-50, and of course authors are permitted to change that, and that's the part of the agreement that is confidential, and part of the restraining order that Daryl Hall has filed is seeking to make sure that information stays confidential in case that lends me to think maybe it is not 50-50 because artists don't want in the event that it's not 50-50, artists clearly do not want that information made public because it may many people may view that as an indication of how much creative input the different artists have had. Right now, we know them as Hall and Oates. A lot of people assume that they're 50-50. Some people have favorites amongst them, but if their ownership in this private agreement between them is, say, 90-10, then that changes, it's just an example, that changes their perception and also their value going forward. artists. So that could have an impact there, and that's probably maybe some of what's behind this request for a restraining order to prevent the sale and to also keep that contract confidential.
None of my business, but now I got to know. The patent professor, attorney John Rizvi, thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.